We all benefit by positive relationships, but if we don't have the opportunity to have positive relationships, that could, for one, leave us very lonely. But for two, just think of how, for those of you who have friends who have relationships, think of how different your lives would be if you didn't have that. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how to be a friend to someone with autism. So in this episode, I'm just going to give you guys a few things about how to be a friend to someone with autism. And I think that some of us need some guidance on that, because if the person with autism, maybe they don't verbally communicate, or they act like, from your perspective, they might act like somebody who doesn't really want to interact. That may not necessarily be true. They could be stressed out about the environment that they're in. They could really want to have a friend, but they just don't know how to go about doing it. So, there's a saying about what assumptions do. So just keep in mind that we should never jump to assumptions. So some of the tips are, so if you are someone who's in the public, and I'm going to assume maybe that you're someone that doesn't really know that much about autism. And for those of you who do, you can share this episode with people that maybe are in your friends group that you're thinking, oh, they just don't get it. And so maybe they can benefit by some of the tips that I'm going to share today. So, the one of the big things that people with autism tell us is don't stare. If you have a question, ask. This particularly, my brain kind of thinks about people who engage in self-stimulatory behavior. So we'll say hand flapping, for example. When my son was young, people would just kind of like look at him in the store and not really understand. And if I saw them doing that, I would usually, I guess I would either, if I was in a rush, of course, I would just get out of there. But if I had the opportunity, I would talk to them about, why he might be engaging in that kind of behavior. I wouldn't say give them his diagnosis. That's none of anybody's business. But I would say, he does that. It really helps him. Hand flapping really helps him when we're grocery shopping, because then he kind of gets through the store and he's engaged in something that gives him a lot of benefit. So, if you are somewhere and you see someone doing something or even talking in a certain way, just ask. Most people want you to ask questions. That's most definitely more than just staring at them. Okay. Use your normal voice to talk. Don't talk like a baby to them. And the other thing that I think I used to see more often, but I still see it today in classrooms, is where teachers use what I call a sing-song voice. Good morning, class. You guys know what I mean. Do people talk like that? I don't think so. When I'm out in public, I don't hear people using a sing-songy voice. And how do we prepare our kids for being in the world if we're using a sing-songy voice and nobody else does? So try not to do that. And for people who don't verbally communicate, and I'm going to go on the assumption that they can't hear, so don't act like they can't. Don't keep repeating the same thing at a louder voice. That's not really going to be beneficial. And frankly, it could insult them because they can hear you. Maybe they're not processing, or maybe you're not helping them come up with a way where they can communicate back to you what it is they're thinking or how to respond to your question. Take initiative to include, this other person. So if you want to be friends with somebody, if you want to make friends with somebody with autism, sometimes you have to take the initiative, because a huge part of an autism diagnosis is challenges with social skills. And so they, like I said before, they may really want to be friends, but they just don't really know how to go about doing that, how to initiate, how to begin to form or forge a relationship. So if you take the initiative, that will reduce the stress and hopefully create a long-lasting relationship that you both will enjoy. Find a common interest. So many people on the autism spectrum are incredible artists. And that could be from acting to paint to drawing to music. And sadly, many never get the opportunity because they spend so much time maybe in therapies, trying to, for their parents to help them, trying to figure out ways to communicate or how to be able to, walk through a public area and remain with their parent without running off. So there's so many things that they end up having to work on. And then of course in school, reading, writing, and math and all that. And I think we do, I think we do every child a disservice by not giving them enough opportunity to engage in the arts, not only kids with autism. But a lot of times when you find that common interest, that's how we find our tribe. I would bet most people listening to me or watching me on YouTube, your people, right? The people that you engage most with, that you think are the most valuable people in your life, chances are good that they have something in common with you. So you guys have a common interest. These days we see a lot in politics. People just tend to be more engaged in the political arena than in the past. And if you're a person that wants to do that, more power to you, because that is something that there are very clean lines in, the political atmosphere right now. And so maybe I know some people with autism who really enjoy that area, getting together with other people that think the same as they do when it comes to politics. So don't make the assumption, you parents that are out there, don't make the assumption that your kids aren't interested in politics, because it's actually been pretty interesting for me to meet some people and for them to share with me why they enjoy that. I don't enjoy politics, but that doesn't mean that there's not tons of people who do. Remember sensory sensitivities. And so if you want to be a friend, maybe if you know that this person might be really sensitive to a blowing whistle, maybe a school game is not the ideal place to start. And if you want to try it, maybe figuring out ahead of time, like where should we sit that's furthest from, say, a referee that might be blowing a whistle. So just be thinking about those kind of things. A lot of, especially kids that I know on the spectrum, they love bouncing. So if you have a bouncing place by you, those sometimes are pretty amazing. And I know tons of people with autism who are adults, including my son, him and his friends. He's got a group of, 7 or 8 really close friends. And they love going to this bounce place that's in our area. And they just think they died went to heaven because it is so fulfilling, and they meet other friends there, and it's just a really cool activity. So, just consider those type of things. You might find some really cool stuff that's there. Ask questions and give them time to answer. So some people on the autism spectrum have what we call, delayed processing, where you might say something and they have to think about it for a minute, because it just has to fire into more areas of the brain than it might need for you. So just be cognizant of that. Just give them the extra time to process. Usually it's a couple seconds, but in today's world that's so fast-paced, sometimes we all might say something and we expect an immediate response. You're standing in line at the grocery store and you ask the clerk behind the counter a question. If they don't answer right away, we're automatically thinking they have an attitude. They're not answering me, because we don't give people time. So in your schedules and with your relationships, just give people a little bit of time, because if you do, you could be pretty amazed with the response. Okay. We don't want you guys to be bystanders. So we want you to stand up for everybody, no matter who they are. But in today's world, especially if I have anybody listening that is maybe a person who is a teenager, right? So teenagers or parents of typical teenagers, say they're in high school. You guys might hear some stuff about how students use their cell phones to record all kinds of stuff that happens in school. And a lot of times teenagers with autism are caught up in those videos. And what we need to do is we need to promote more teenagers to not be bystanders, but to actually engage and protect people who may be targets of bullying. And each school has a process for dealing with that, for reporting it, for seeking counseling services, I mean, there's even in the state of Florida, there's something called the Hope Scholarship. That's a scholarship for students who are bullied in school. So there are all kinds of different types of interventions. So if you're trying to be a friend to somebody with autism, we need you to stand up. We need you to be there for them. Because, there's that thing, if you want to have a friend, you have to be a friend. And that would be a really great opportunity. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is don't be afraid. So if you see a person with autism that may be rocking or hand flapping or pacing or repeating back the same thing, like when you say something to them, they repeat it back. Don't be afraid, and just take that as an opportunity to maybe, if they're pacing, pace with them, talk to them. Because a lot of times while they're engaging in that, that's how they are calming. That's how they are self-soothing. And there's no reason to be afraid of them. That is helping them be able to interact with you and the world. Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys benefited a little bit by this. I, again, want to share with you our program called No Limits Global. So just go on to our website, autismfl.org, and you'll be able to get info there. And a lot of the topics that we talk about here on the podcast and on our website and our YouTube channel, you're going to find really incredible speakers there on No Limits Global. Okay, so I encourage you guys to check that out. It's a massive amount of benefit. Okay, well, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and I will see you again soon.